Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's episode of CN Unit Analysis, we are going to be taking a look at the Herta. As per usual, our early access review already covered extensively on what her kit does, so today we are going to be taking a look at the more advanced, in-depth portions regarding her kit, right? The current team that we have at the current moment is very similar to how like Acheron with the upgrade of Jiaoqiu in the future, and then Reba got the upgrade of Fuke in the future. So eventually when the Herta gets her equivalent upgrade of these two different units, we can expect to see a performance go up substantially, right? But at the baseline, she has a lot of room to grow for a version 3 DPS, especially a version 3 Premier DPS. So the Herta is going to be very strong against, Erudition, right? So group targets, but for Herta specifically, she has a little bit of a unique factor, which is basically the way her targeting works, which is going to be 3 hits in the main target, 2 hits in adjacent, and then 1 hit all the way to targets at the side. So specifically for units that spawn mobs, for example, like the Sanctus Medicus or the Rame Big Boy Bug, whenever they summon more and more mobs, the Herta can quite efficiently deal with them, especially for bosses as well as the little mobs. They can generate these goons that increase Big Herta's energy regeneration as well as the total damage based on the interpretation stacks, as well as how quickly can she recover her ultimate, right? In a scenario where there are no summons, so especially for things like Decaying Shadow or Guardian Shadow over here, there would be a certain amount of pressure specifically tied to the interpretation stacks. For single target or even double target scenario, the Herta would face a little bit of an issue gathering this up to 42 as quickly as possible. So strictly speaking, in a single target scenario, she's not gonna be performing better than units like Fei Xiao, which is gonna be able to excel against single target DPS, right? So this kind of just boils back to the point where environments in Honkai style, it greatly shapes the performance of the DPS, and going forward into the future, as of right now, she's still gonna be performing very well since we are catering a lot of mobs, trotters to make Big Herta shine. But in the future updates, in the future endgame, we want to see how MiHoYo is gonna be able to adapt these units, right? So in this current team comp, like I mentioned as well, she is lacking a best in slot erudition, best in slot support, as well as a best in slot sustain, right? For this current moment, do take the current team comp consideration as, essentially another erudition DPS. Hopefully in the future, if we get another erudition that can, be much more synergistic than just Jade, then we do expect Herta's performance to go up substantially. For pure vision, she's really easily getting the maximum scores, no questions whatsoever. So whether or not players should decide to pull for the Herta, if you are somebody that, has not gotten a single DPS ever since since version 1.0 for pure vision, then the Herta is going to be adding a lot of value to your account, since she can pretty much excel in all 3 endgame modes as of this current moment, right? And then for the brand new players, for example, if you're a Bob, right, if you just created a free-to-play account and you just started playing Honkai Star as of this current moment, then pulling for a single copy of Big Herta with Remembrance Trailblazer, Mini Herta, as well as a 4-star Gallagher, this is pretty much going to be the strongest and most free-to-play accessible team comp as of version 3.0, especially for a new player, right? Then for the Dolphins or the Whales who want to, basically take her to the next level, then E2S1 Herta is pretty much going to be, at this current point, one of, if not the strongest Erudition DPS units for a pretty foreseeable future to come, right? A bit of word of caution is this is also going to be dependent on what sort of teammates are we going to be getting in the future. So I would say kind of hold your reservations first. Just know that E2S1 Big Herta is very strong. So for example, back then when Black Swan was released, we had the expectation where DOT is going to be the archetype going forward, but unfortunately DOT just never really took off. So for players that don't really want to put all their eggs into one basket and just all in Big Herta, you can kind of just chill a little bit and see what future meta is going to develop, right? So that is going to be that. So in terms of pulling priority, if you are able to spare 3 different 5-stars, then getting E2 first would be the highest priority even before the Signature Light Cone, right? And then once you got the E2, then if you have a little bit of push remaining, then consider Signature Light Cone, because we do have quite a lot of free-to-play alternatives, especially if you want to pair with units like Sunday or Robin, then she's not going to really feel the difference between with or without S1 by that much, right? At this current point, Robin as well as Jade, they are very strong. They are basically the strongest one, if not the strongest teammates for Big Herta, but they will not be her destination, right? There would quite likely be stronger supports and stronger teammates coming in the future. For example, we already see the release of Tribi, and we want to see how she's going to be performing in the next 5 weeks when you see the creator access server. So for now, just kind of keep in mind, if you have to choose between a support, look out for 3B's performance first before determining if you want to pull for a Robin for Herta or 3B for Herta, right? So that's gonna be that. I will be skimming through basically the majority of how her kit functions because we have went through this quite extensively in the early access. So jumping into our D Herta's advanced analysis, first question is, do we have to bring along an Erudition unit with D Herta? And the answer is, in short, yes, especially if you're not gonna be a Giga Whale, right? Most of the time, running an Erudition, not only does it provide with additional interpretation, it allows you to charge your ultimate faster, gives you more crit damage boost as well as your damage multipliers for all of the things. So unless you are gonna be replacing your Erudition unit with like an E6 Robin, almost 99.99% of the time, you will be better off just running a 4-star Erudition like your Serval or Baby Herta, right? And then a second question you guys must be asking is must Herta be tied to a support that is like a team-wide support? What is a team-wide support? So units like Ranmei and Robin, they basically buff more than one unit, right? As of this current moment, we can kind of see that D Herta is not strictly dependent on units like Robin, because even units like Sunday can synergize extremely well with Herta, because you can just run your Erudition slot, which is gonna be your mini Herta or your Serval, as the driver, right? You can just kind of run them as a battery. They don't really have to do any semblance of damage. Run them with 4-piece Ego, 2-piece Luxasha, all in speed, and just generate as much energy, as many interpretation stacks for Herta as possible. Then you can just kind of direct all of your buffs, for example, a unit like Sunday, into Big Herta itself, just do the absolute highest amount of damage. So you don't really specifically need to run her with Robin. And even if you do run her with Robin, the theoretical highest damage value is not going to be too far off if you want to run units like Sunday or even Remembrance Trailblazer, right? The main reason is just because Herta is still lacking a best in slot Harmony slot. So as of this current moment, the differences between these different teams, they are not going to be too prominent. Talking a little bit more about Big Herta's energy rotations, we do know that minimally we are going to be able to get 39 energy, and then at max against 5 targets is going to be a 45 energy every single time you use a skill. So after using 3 skills, you are able to generate 120 energy, which means you are going to be lacking roughly 100 energy. So in order to fulfill this 100 energy gap within the rest of a teammate, it is basically just going to be tied from your teammates attacking, whether they're single target or multi-target, getting hit by the enemy or killing the enemy mobs, right? Within this 100 energy, you need to provide roughly 6 to 10 actions, right? Minimum is going to be 9 energy each at a maximum of 15 within 2 turns. So within 2 turns, if the remaining 3 teammates can attack between 6 to 10 times, depending on how many enemies they hit, you can fulfill a 3-turn ultimate. So why is it going to be within 2 turns? It's because Big Herta ultimate does give her 100% action very advanced, allow her to turn immediately. So you do need to satisfy this condition within these 2 turns so that we can get a 3-turn ultimate, which means that on average, the remaining 3 units in your team, they have to act at least 1 to 1.5 times. Now, since most of the units, we are definitely going to be acting once a turn, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to see how frequently can these teammates act 1.5 times within a single wave. Now, most units in this current Honkaistarrail endgame, especially if you run them above 134 speed, 160 speed, etc., it is going to be very easy for them to hit 1.5 times every single turn. And this is not even factoring in our ultimate. So for example, if you are using Gallagher, after factoring a basic into ultimate to basic, that's going to be 1.66. For Serval, if you're going to be running her with the passkey Serval build, spamming her ultimate, she's going to act very frequently as well. And then for Remembrance Trailblazer, she can easily stack on 2 or even more than that, because you know Man also considered as an AoE attack during her turn, right? So in terms of the team building as well as the energy rotations for Big Herta, almost every single scenario, you can basically guarantee Big Herta getting a 3-turn ultimate every single time. If you are going to be running this with attack percentage or energy rope, doesn't really change too much, because keep in mind, the energy you gain from the tracers, that 9 minimum up to 15, it is not going to be impacted by your energy regeneration rope, right? So in Memory of Chaos or Apex Shadows, it is almost guaranteed to be 3-turn ultimate. For game modes like Pure Vision, sometimes you can, you know, since it's going to be 5 target every single time, it could even go for a 2-turn or maybe even a 1-turn ultimate. So these 2 tracers from Big Herta, they are very important. Please unlock them, and once you do unlock them, you can essentially get within a 2 to 3-turn ultimate with Big Herta, which is kind of tied to how her enhanced skill dealing the highest amount of damage, right? Specifically talking about Herta as well as her performance in this AoE environment, you can see that for units like Repa as well as even Jade, or even units like Argenti, Big Herta's Erudition targeting is not gonna be similar to like one boss against all of these different mobs and split this damage accordingly, right? So the way Big Herta's damage functions, like I mentioned at the start of the video, is gonna be 3 procs in a single target, 2 procs to the adjacent target, and then only 1 proc at the target all the way to the side, which means that you can concentrate all of your energy, or rather concentrate all of your damage to the guy in the middle, which means what kind of environment would benefit Big Herta better than the other units. So this is gonna be an excellent example. I'm not sure what this guy's name is, but guess you will always keep summoning these different goons whenever you have to hit him, right? And it will keep summoning, and this will allow Big Herta to very easily deal with these different minions. They can either apply a debuff, apply damage like these trotters over here, which means that you can concentrate your damage even further into the single target. So this is where Big Herta's environment is gonna be able to outperform units like Fei Xiao, because Fei Xiao would struggle quite a little bit when she faced up against environments where it is a little bit awkward to use her follow-up as well as the skill to deal with the mobs, because sometimes it's not going to be quite enough unless you do heavily invest into Fei Xiao, and you will need to direct your ultimate into the bug. If you cannot kill the minion, that means you can't really apply a debuff, which means that you're going to be dealing less damage with your ultimate anyway. So Fei Xiao is not going to be as suitable compared to a DPS like Big Herta, which is definitely going to be able to excel in these kind of bosses. One of Big Herta's weaknesses is definitely going to be her skill point management, right? Her skill point is one of the highest skill point consumption, especially when factoring that the ultimate does give her a action value advance for free, right? Which means that she's gonna be consuming 1.5 skill point per turn on average once you factor in her ultimate. And if you want to bring a unit like Remembrance Trailblazer, which also consumes a little bit of skill point, especially if you want to use a skill to summon Meme, then you are gonna be facing tremendous skill point pressure. So if you are using units like Huo, you are gonna be facing even more skill point pressure, despite the fact that technically Huo should be extremely synergistic with units like RMC as well as Herta, right? Because of the maximum energy regen. Skill point is going to become a problem for you. So you can fix this by either getting the S1 or getting units like Sunday with his signature light cone to drastically reduce the skill point problem. Then another weakness you guys want to kind of consider with Herta is kind of similar to Acheron. Acheron basically deals no damage unless you use her ultimate, right? Her skill, unless you got an E6, basically does nothing. Somewhat similar to Big Herta, outside of her enhanced skill as well as the ultimate, she's dealing very little damage with her normal skill or even basic attack, right? So if you want to fix this problem, getting the E2 is going to drastically increase the performance in battle. So if you do not want to get this E2, then you basically need to kind of fit your damage downtime until you get your ultimate as well as your enhanced skill. Speaking about this ultimate and enhanced skill, units like Sparkle as well as your non-E6 Bronya, their buffs would not be able to cover Herta all the way up to enhanced skill, since the ultimate is going to give her an extra turn. So do keep in mind when you want to factor in all these different buffers into consideration. Then jumping into the team conversation for D Herta, as of this current moment, there are no perfect endgame team, because our current Erudition as well as Harmony slot, there are rooms for growth. So Big Herta is quite likely going to be getting even better teammates as we see more and more units getting released into version 3, right? But as of this current moment, Robin and Jade seems to be a, basically one of the better team comps that Herta can run, but it is not going to be the best team comp that she's going to be running in a long time, right? So as of this current moment, this team comp, especially if you want to consider running Robin with Fei Xiao or Robin with Herta, Robin with Fei Xiao is going to be more synergistic because her frequency of attack is going to be far slower compared to Fei Xiao. So for Robin, her energy is going to become an issue. You are probably going to face in a situation where Robin do not have her ultimate at 100% uptime, which means that you're going to be losing quite a decent chunk of damage, especially on top of losing the action value advance, right? You can't really fully utilize Robin's kit with units like D Herta, especially without a secondary follow-up unit. And then another point is if you're going to be using Jade, Jade basically gives you a 30 speed, but Topaz is going to be even more synergistic than Jade for your basically a follow-up team comp, because proof of that is going to be a 50% follow-up damage vulnerability, right? So as of this current moment, Jade also has a bit of a problem in generating skill points, because you're basically generating 1 skill point every 3 turns. And then if you're going to be using units like Saval or Herta, you could be even more skill point positive once you run light cones like Passkey. Now this is not really because of Jade, because Jade is not really meant to be a support build for D Herta anyways. Jade is already meant to be a DPS that's going to be perfect in pure fiction, so it is kind of like a scenario where Acheron first launched and we basically were running her with Seal Wolf and Pella. So until we get an upgrade for future version 3's units, D Herta, Jade and Robin is pretty much one of the best assault team comps, and you can kind of run them in every single endgame scenario. But I'm going to be showing you guys a little bit more of some different team comps for your consideration, and one of those is basically going to be a very accessible team comp, Remembrance Trailblazer as well as Small Herta, right? If you're going to be running that, it's pretty much 90% of their performance compared to Robin, so you don't really have to consider about it that much, right? If you do want to consider from a cost to cost basis, running this team, RMC E2 Herta and Mini Herta is going to be much stronger compared to a E0 Robin, E0 Herta and E0 Jade, right? So if you want to talk strictly about the number of costs in terms of strategy invested, E2 Herta is going to give you a much better performance. Yeah, back to the free-to-play team comp, you can kind of either run Baby Herta, or if you do not want to run Baby Herta in any of these 3 endgame cons, Serval is also a very decent alternative. In fact, Serval can actually generate a lot of stacks because her E2 unlocks the additional energy, which allows us to get 1 turn, 2 turn ultimates very consistently in all of our endgame, right? Therefore, Remembrance Trailblazer, true damage, action value advance, getting the charge from Meme, it also synergizes extremely well with D Herta. Just note that the true damage buff, the coverage might be a little bit lower because D Herta does have the action value advance from the ultimate. There are 2 important points when it comes to using D Herta in the team comp. Number 1 is going to be speed tuning, especially if you use her with Remembrance Trailblazer. So you're always starting the battle off at 93% max energy. Every single time you get hit, you're also going to be getting 1% energy. And if you further that into consideration, you only need 3 different characters to move before Meme is going to be able to action value advance, which means that if you are doing a speed tuning, you ideally want your Herta to be the 3rd unit moving before your sustain, right? So in this scenario here, you want RMC to move, followed by Jade, followed by Herta, and then once Herta is going to be able to move, Meme is going to be able to cut in and give the extra turn back to D Herta again, right? So if your D Herta is going to be slower than your Gallagher, then that's going to be a pretty bad place because you're basically going to be wasting one of Remembrance Trailblazer's additional action. A very important thing to keep in note is that this true damage, it should always, as much as possible, always have the true damage buff before you use Herta's enhanced skill. Sometimes if you do not have the true damage buff because the buff coverage ran out, it is worth it to just use basic attack and wait for Meme's buff again so that we can get this additional up to 50% true damage multiplier increase. So it's very important to drastically improve Big Herta's damage, especially if you use her with Remembrance Trailblazer. If you are going to be running a generator battery like Serval or Herta, running them with 4-piece Ego and 2-piece Luxasha, running Herta into slot 1 is going to be the ideal setup so that they can generate as many stacks as possible as well as much energy as possible. For their light cone, if you do not want to run passkey, these 2 light cone are also pretty decent, but passkey is pretty much going to be the best option, though keep in mind that it's going to definitely make them a lot squishier. If you are going to be using Remembrance MC to your team too, for example, if you're going to be playing Mimo Sprite's team and you don't really have Robin anymore because you're raising follow-up, then running Sunday with Herta is honestly an extremely viable plan, or even Sunday with Robin together with Herta. This is going to be good in the sense where for Sunday, speed tuning is a lot easier and the buff coverage is basically 100% as compared to Remembrance Trailblazer, right? So just run a fast Herta, 1 speed slower Sunday, and it will just be exactly how you will play any of your other crit DPS. Best ideal situation is running both of them with their signature light cone, because without it, you're almost certainly going to run into skill point problems without any of these signature light cones, so do keep that into consideration. Aside from that, you also want to make sure that you do stack on the sufficient number of interpretation stacks with Sunday. Since Sunday is going to be giving D Herta a lot of actions, sometimes you might cast your ultimate into your enhanced skill, but the enemy hasn't stacked on their 42 stacks of interpretation yet. So in this kind of scenario, it is much more advisable to just save the enhanced skill until the enemy has 42 stacks before proceeding, right? If you still want to run Robin instead of Sunday with Herta, do keep in mind that the sustain slot, you really want to try and make sure that you get the energy regeneration for Robin as well as the health regeneration so that she can survive, right? So units like Aventurine, or even units like Luocha, which is very skill point positive, it can be quite beneficial since Robin herself doesn't generate a lot of skill points and Jade is going to be generating skill points at a much slower pace. So extremely skill point positive supports, it can be quite beneficial even though they don't really give you the energy like Huan, but skill points in Honkaistarrail is one of the most important factors, right? I do have with me a little bit of an advanced team building analysis for your consideration. So this is going to be in a Terry Crocker scenario, running the exact same team against the Memory of Chaos 12 first half in the latest creator experience server. So this is going to be from another set. You can kind of see that the unit, or rather the team that had the fastest clear when using E0 as one big Herta with a Remembrance Trailblazer is going to be a 140 speed Windset Von Weg Serval with an E0 S0 Huo. This is the only team that allows us to get a 2-turn clear. If we are not going to be running this, another addition is going to be actually an E0 S0 Windset Argenti with E0 S0 Huo. These two are the only ones that actually got a 2-turn clear or a 2-cycle clear. These two, they almost got a 2-cycle. This is going to be a 160 speed mini Herta, and this is going to be an E0 S0 Jade, right? Then for the 3-turn clears, we have E0 S1 Reba. Then this is going to be the double mini Herta with both Lingsha and Aventrine. So not to say that this means that Huo is the best sustain, or like Aventrine is the best sustain, or like we're going to be running Windset Argenti as the best erudition, but just some points for you guys to consider. So for E0 S0 Lingsha versus Aventrine versus Huo, you can see that this is the amount of times that they attacked. So between the number of attacks, Lingsha is actually going to be the highest at 16, right? Then this is going to be 10, and this is going to be 3. So yeah, it's very, very high frequency, but the difference between Aventrine, especially in a practical battle performance, is not too big of a difference. The reason why is because for Big Herta, because she has so many extra turns, it's gonna actually lead to Aventrine's shield falling off, which means that there are some times where Aventrine needs to cast his skill more frequently. But since Aventrine's ultimate gives us a little bit more crit damage, the difference between him as well as Lingsha is not going to be too big, despite having 6 less frequency in terms of this attack, right? And then finally for Huo, even though her attack frequency is going to be the lowest, you can basically cast your ultimate twice, which is going to be 40% max energy, not just to Big Herta, but also pretty much to Remembrance Trailblazer, to Meme, as well as the 3rd slot evolution unit, right? So that is probably one of the reasons why Huo seems to be super synergistic in a realistic scenario. And then for your erudition path over here, you can see the fastest is going to be our 140 speed Windset Serval, extremely fast energy regeneration, and you can basically reach a 0 turn on the very first half. This is only possible with either Windset Serval or Windset Argenti, right? Because of the extremely fast charge, which can pull up our Meme for Big Herta. Then this is 160 speed mini Herta, very standard, so nothing too crazy. This is going to be 16. And then our E0 S0 J at 17, the plus 30 speed with Remembrance Trailblazer, the usefulness is not going to be too bad. Between this, if you want to use E0 S0 J, running either Robin or Sunday is going to give you a better performance as compared to Remembrance Trailblazer. And this is going to be a very interesting pick, which is going to be a Windset Argenti. Extremely fast energy regeneration, exactly the same as our Windset Serval, so might be something that you guys want to consider. I'm just going to try this out myself after stream as well, because this sounds very fun, right? So something to consider. And then this is going to be E0 S1 Reba, basically extremely skill point inefficient, basically don't have to consider. So yep, just some additional team building analysis that you guys can kind of consider for your own team building experience. And now jumping into our light cone section, I'm not going to talk about too much. I'm just going to be showing you guys the numbers and the differences for your consideration, right? So you can see for the signature light cone with RMC, Sunday, and Robin, signature light cone is going to be 100%. Himiko against 5 target is going to be very close at 91.06%. And then this is going to be Before Dawn, which is Jingyuan's light cone, slightly performing better in Robin compared to Sunday, but it's basically less than a 0.5% difference. And then this is going to be Himiko signature light cone, but only against 3 targets. You can see the difference also very small. So the numbers for consideration, you can kind of see it's not going to be too crazy, especially if you do have Himiko's signature light cone. And then jumping into our relic portion, you can see that 4-piece Scholar is going to be our best in slot. Sigonia is going to be better by 4% compared to Izumo and Rutilan. This is going to be assuming you are using her against a scenario like Pure Fiction, right? Aside from this, pretty much all these 3, whichever one is a better subset, you kind of just run them and go. Not too big of a difference. If you're just going to be starting from scratch, you could consider running an Izumo, because Izumo and Sigonia, they are basically both in the same role, so you don't really have to worry about it that much. But if you still want to farm a little bit more broken kill for supports, then running for roll 7 Rutilan is going to be a better choice, right? So for our main stat and substats, very straightforward. Crit or crit damage body, speed or attack boost depending on scenario, ice damage sphere, and attack rope. That's pretty much it, right? And finally, for Eidolons segment, you can kind of see over here, just gonna jump straight into the numbers because the effects I already explained in the early access. So E1 is gonna be roughly 20.67, E2 at 62.75. Absolutely disgusting Eidolon 2, pretty much the strongest Eidolon 2 we've seen in a very, very long time because of the double enhanced skill, which is gonna be very, very synergistic with our E1, which means you're always almost getting 42 stacks on top of the damage multipliers combining from your adjacent targets, and you have the additional action value advance, which means she cycles even faster. So E2 is absolutely disgusting, and all the way through to E6 is going to be a 32.42 final damage increase with the Ice Res down as well as the ultimate multiplier. I would say that E2 is an excellent stopping point, especially for players that want pretty much the best bang for buck for Herta, right? So that's going to be that. And with that, we have come to the end of the Herta CN unit analysis. Let me know what you guys think of her, if you guys have proof of her as well as your experience playing with her. Word of the day is probably going to be the best is yet to come, right? Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join Twitter, join Twitter. All the best. I'll catch up with you. I'll see you guys next time.